Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to On Your Mental. This is the podcast that shares candid, open, and sometimes vulnerable conversations. I'm one of your hosts, Ruben. The other co-host, Kabir, is unfortunately sick, so he's missing this one, and it was a bad one to miss, Cabs, because we're joined by an amazing guest. Jessa White is here, a therapist out of Seattle, to talk about how therapy plays into relationships and to dive into relationships, attachment styles, all sorts of things that I know all of you are going to really enjoy. So without further ado, I'll jump right into the episode. I hope you all like it. If you do, leave a like, comment. Make sure you check out all of Jessa's stuff. It's going to be linked in the description. So you can check out her TikTok or Instagram. YouTube is going to be coming up soon as well. And I'm sure you all are going to get a lot out of this conversation. So we'll see you in a second when it starts. Peace. Do you have any questions before we start?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm ready to rock and roll.
Ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, why not?
Shit, eh?
It was important.
Well, then we'll start. Welcome to On Your Mental, Jessa. I appreciate you being here and the journey. I mean, to give the audience a little snippet of what you've been doing today. Where did you come from? How are you here in Vancouver right now?
I'm a Seattle-based therapist, and I drove up through the border with my Italian partner.
My Italian
stallion partner, and we're in line, and there's about 15 cars in front of us, and we picked the slowest agent ever. And I'm like, they're gonna ask us a million questions, and he goes, "We're just gonna tell them we're going to Vancouver to get some bitches."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Don't say that."
Did he?
No.
He should have.
No. I was like, don't say that.
Border agents have zero tolerance for jokes, hey?
No.
Yeah.
She says bonjour. So and he was like, ciao. And I was like, hi.
No, the last time I went down to Seattle, actually, last time I went to the States. And they make me feel so scared. The border agents, like I'm going to say something wrong, even though like all I'm saying is, oh, I'm just going for a day trip. You know, and that's legit all it is.
What are you doing that day?
Right. Like, fuck, am I smuggling something? I don't know. Maybe I am.
She has this to roll down her back window. No, he just
yeah. But the drive up was okay and everything. And I mean, it's raining. It's a shitty day.
It's normal for me.
Yeah. Same weather. Yeah, we were saying that when you came up. But thank you for being here, Jessa. You reached out to us with the podcast and said, you think you'd make for a good female guest as a podcast that talks mainly about men's mental health. Yeah,
and then when we got talking and you said relationships is something that your audience is interested in, I was like, oh, you got to get a girl on. You got to get a girl perspective on relationships and a therapist too, so we can.
Yeah, what better perspective?
Marry all of those together.
Marriage. Look at that. Huh?
Oh, how
so
funny.
Intentional. Yeah, wow. But yeah, for my audience, for people who maybe either have or haven't seen you pop up on TikTok, you've been just blowing up in the TikTok space and sharing your therapy wisdom, these nuggets of really, really good info on there for people who are just wanting to better understand themselves and mental health. And I love that. I think that's really cool. And you've been doing a great job with it. So I'm honored to have you here and get to hear about your perspective as a therapist on relationships in this modern life, you know, and we've all got questions always. And before we sat down, you were talking about how there's like a sacred, what's the right word? Sacredness?
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Works.
There's a sacredness to relationships that ought to be respected, right? And it's important that we maybe like get in touch with that from time to time and look at that. What does that sound like? So I'm sure some of that's going to come up today.
It has to be, you know, we're getting into dating, I think, for the wrong reasons at this point. And if we start taking it as serious as it is, we're going to notice better partnerships. We're going to notice better life overall, happier, healthier. Our mental health is going to look better. And we have to kind of reframe why we're getting into a relationship, which we're going to get into. Why are you choosing a partner? What appeals you to them? And what's the point of a relationship to you? Not what's the point because society tells you that you should, or it'll equal this. But more, what does it mean to you?
At an individual level, right? There's a uniqueness to it.
Yeah, what did your parents teach you? Because you're going to get into a relationship maybe trying to fix the wounds that they left or replicating their relationship that's not fitting for you. We're constantly falling into these traps, whether it be the values society puts on or the values our parents put on us. And then we end up with people X years down the road, and we're like, oh my God, how did I end up with this person?
How am I here?
Why am I here? You
here?
are not the one.
Yeah, nah. I wonder, and I don't know if I have the answer, maybe you have the answer, but I wonder if that's a kind of thing that you can only see sometimes looking back. But I think maybe therapy and the conversation we're going to have today can help you see it earlier. Is that kind of what we're suggesting here with the way that you might see and understand how finding the right partner kind of works?
Yeah, therapy is a great avenue for figuring yourself out. But my biggest, just to immediately get into giving advice.
Yeah. This is what she's here for.
Just immediately to tell you what to do with your life is sitting in meditation. If you can sit in meditation, I recommend this to all my clients who come in and say, I just want a partner, or here's the 15th guy that's left me dry, or here's the third girl I dated that's totally wrong for me. I always ask them, well, what's right for you, and how do you know that? And I get a myriad of answers, and I always say, well, let's sit and let's really think about this in silence. And I'll say, I want you to think about your perfect partner or your perfect version of love for 10 minutes a day for the next week, and come back next week and journal about it afterwards. And let's review the data.
Yeah.
Let's review 7 days of data of what you have thought in silence and stillness about what love means to you, what partnership means to you. And let's create an intentional space for this person to come into your life, because you're going to know if they're right at that point, because you've investigated the points that they need to have to be the right person before they even approach you.
Interesting. People
aren't doing that.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, because I know I want to ask questions, like there's specific questions I want to ask, but like this has me thinking stuff already. We've had conversations on this podcast with a good friend of mine, Jeff Yu, a few times, and he's got a philosophy background. And great. And very exciting guy, very loud. But he's talked about relationships in the context of like logic, how they play with each other, because like logic ends where love begins sometimes. But this is a way of creating real actionable steps to create data to understand something, and not to be analytical about love. Like you shouldn't be. You should also like follow your feelings to a degree. But that's a really cool idea, just to sit in meditation for 10 minutes a day for a week and jot some stuff down. That's interesting.
I love what you're saying about marrying, to use it again, marrying logic with love, because you're saying they end at one point, but what about putting them together? What about that? And it's less logic and more intention. And you're going to...
I love that.
Yeah. It's not like, oh, they must have this and they must have this. It's that I listen to my heart and I ask myself, what works with me? What am I looking for? What does partnership mean to me? My therapist made me do this stupid exercise. Yeah. I'm on day 6, and I've realized that, and this is a great example is my partner has a couple chronic illnesses, right? And so love for him means a nurturing partner. And when he considers his health, his body, his future, he goes, well, I need someone who's a nurturer. And a lot of men would say that, right? But the value behind that for him is huge. Much larger given his circumstance.
Right.
And so if he didn't sit down and say that, he might meet a girl, beautiful woman, but maybe she's a little bit more hard around the edges. Maybe she doesn't have that internal motherly, which I don't, so I don't know why I ended up with him. But, he sees that I can meet that inevitable need for him.
And there is so much more value behind that for him, and that would come with reflecting and understanding for yourself why you need certain things in a relationship.
What does it mean to you?
Now, you're a therapist, and we're going to get some therapy talk in here. It's about as close as my audience will get to free therapy.
Yes, I love that.
So the first question I want to kind of kick things off with for us would be how relationships can benefit from individual therapy, if they can at all. I mean, I think the obvious answer is yes. But couples therapy aside, what's the value in going to therapy for yourself and how that would present in relationships, either immediately or down the line?
Such a fantastic question. In the New York Times, they published a research study done by Hinge. And Hinge...
Like the dating app Hinge.
Yeah. And Hinge found that 91% of millennials would prefer if their partners were in therapy.
Really? Wow. 91%, eh?
And I think I know why.
Sure.
I don't think millennials need their partners to be healed.
Mm.
Because I don't know any millennials that are.
No, good point. Yeah.
I don't think that's what we're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
I think millennials like thinking that their partner is attempting to become aware of their blind spots and their emotions and learning the skills to communicate those.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that at all comes in like from a perspective of wanting to also protect yourself a little bit from needing to like help someone and be their therapist in quotations?
Of course.
You know, because if you see them doing the work, then you know that you're not the crutch.
You're
Does that
not
make
responsible.
sense?
Or you're not the what is it, the brunt of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not the one that's going to receive somebody's unconscious biases, unconscious behaviors, patterns taught to them by abusive or neglective parents. You're not going to end up getting gaslit. And if you are, you can say you're gaslighting me. That person's in therapy and they know that term.
Yeah.
So it's a full body of reasons why. But I love that study in particular because it just shows that we're really looking for people who are conscious of themselves or at least attempting to become. And that's how it's going to benefit us is through therapy. And I want to be so inclusive to the fact that I am, as a therapist, extremely aware of the cost of therapy and the inability to receive the help you need. I'm also aware of how many bad therapists there are out there. I have to tell you, it's been heartbreaking on my own TikTok page to be receiving comments from people saying things like, my therapist took our session while grocery shopping. I mean, I'm just shocked when I hear these things, but there are things you can do to gain that awareness that I think millennials and others are looking for when they're seeking out a partner who's in therapy. A great research study was done where they showed journaling can be nearly as effective as cognitive behavioral therapy.
I love that.
Journal to get to know yourself. Journal about, there's tons of prompts online that are free. I'm a Buddhist trained mindfulness-based transpersonal therapist, and so I'm gonna probably push meditation in a disgusting way today, because it's what made me, it's who I am, and it's how I figured myself out even more than therapy as a therapist. So sit with yourself. Sit with yourself in meditation, not just to heal your anxieties, to heal your depression, but sit in meditation to get to know, who am I? How does my brain work? So you can confront a partner and say, I think I know myself because I've realized after X amount of months meditating that I'm constantly thinking this way. So you're going to notice these patterns too.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think if I look back at, and counseling and therapy are different, right? I've never gone through therapy, but I have gone to a counselor. And it was all over the phone because I started counseling like mid-pandemic, right? So nothing was in person. It was all over the phone, and it worked for me. And one of the things that it got me to understand about myself was my fear of conflict. And I've wrote more about that too in journaling. I've broken it down and sat with that more to understand it. And since then, I've shared that with my partner. You know, like I've made it clear that like sometimes I'm just avoiding a conversation because I see it as conflict, even though I know it's not. Like at the end of the day, I know it won't be, but I see it that way. And it's kind of hard for me not to sometimes. And that's helped as far as like making it seem like I'm not just ignoring you. You know what I mean? Like I'm not ignoring the conversation. My mood might look a little weird right now because of this. And it can explain that and make it, to come back to your point of like communication being improved by this, right? That's my way of communicating around not communicating sometimes. You know, I know I'm not, and it's this reason, but I'll get there. And sometimes it is just a matter of like force myself to have that conversation. Right? That's the part I'm still working on, is like seeing that it's not conflict.
Have you learned why you're avoiding conflict? What's the fear inside of you?
My fear is always a negative response.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the obvious fear with conflict, right? But it's like a negative response that's to an extreme, you know, that whatever thing I bring up will lead to like a massive fight. Doesn't matter what the thing might be. It could be so small, or it leads to a breakup.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to bring this up because what if it's like just pushing us in the wrong direction?
What if I'm too much?
What if it's too much? Yeah. And it rarely is. You know, and it's all built up in my own head. You know, this is my little mini therapy moment here, you know? But yeah, I found that counseling was great with that, but writing was great with that, you know, and that's the free part of it, right? To your point of like therapy being sometimes inaccessible, but there's so much benefit to therapy of some form in understanding yourself to benefit relationships, right? It's huge.
Absolutely. And that fear of abandonment, or that fear of argument, that fear that you have in there, if anybody listening goes, oh my gosh, that's me too, grab out a journal and write, I am afraid that if I bring up something negative, my partner will leave me. Write that sentence physically, pen and paper, and look at it. And then write out right below it, why? Where does this stem from? And then write, how do I feel when I think this way? There's your first intervention.
Right.
You just looked at a part of yourself you don't love, right? And then you looked at how it shows up, why it shows up. And then you're reflecting now on that trait, which is what we do in therapy, honey.
Yeah. You're just doing it by yourself.
I'm constantly doing that in therapy. I'm like, how did that feel to say that? Oh, it felt bad. Okay, well, what's bad? And where? Right.
And I think it could be easy for someone to kind of discount that as like, oh, how can that be helpful? But when you have these thoughts, let's say like taking this example, right? Like me saying like, oh, I'm afraid of conflict, or I fear conflict. It makes me uncomfortable. And I see difficult conversations as conflict. If I didn't ask myself why, I'm not going any further, you know? And so to have a therapist say those things back to you and help you dig, but asking the right questions to help you dig and start to understand is very powerful.
Of course.
Right. So I see obviously how relationships can benefit from therapy with an individual, right? Couples therapy would be its own thing, but that's not what we're talking about. So we're talking about therapy for yourself. One of the things that I imagine comes up a fair bit in therapy sessions, perhaps, as you're dealing with people talking about stuff going on in relationships, would be attachment styles.
Oh my gosh!
And it is something that has.
I've already been looking at your attachment style.
Yeah.
As
Thanks.
you're telling me this, I'm like, I have some data.
Man, I'm curious to hear it. What are the attachment styles, and why would it benefit someone to know them?
There's a couple ways to explain attachment, and I want to be, of course, give the lineage respect, right? So who started attachment?
That's so come from?
Where does it come from? It's so important, and we need to understand the actual study, because nowadays what you see, and I will raise my hand and admit that I'm one of these people, is on TikTok, symptoms of anxious attachment style, and then it's a list of symptoms. People read the symptoms and go, boom, that's me. And that's great. It is a gateway into understanding attachment. But I also would really love if as many people understood who came up with this theory, this well-respected theory in psychological communities, and what was the study that its origins came from, right?
Is the person who came up with attachment styles, is that the same person that came up with love languages?
No.
Interesting.
The 5 love languages is separate.
Cool.
Gosh, Hinge has a prompt for like, what is your 5? What's your most love language? Yeah. And I was like, wow, psychology's bleeding into everything now. I love it. I love it. But no, they're two people are the founders of attachment, and that's going to be John Bowlby. He is a British man. He is a psychiatrist by trade, meaning he prescribes drugs. And he met an incredible Canadian-born.
Oh, really?
Canadian-born woman. She moved and lived in America for most of her degree and her studies, but Mary Ainsworth. And they came together in a really beautiful, synchronistic way, because he was coming at it so much from psychiatry and she was coming at it from so much of theory and sitting on the couch with somebody.
Yeah.
And they also met at a really fantastic time where ethology was starting. Ethology is the study of looking at things in naturalistic environments.
In like what sense?
Like, let's say you want to study birds, right? What they would do usually is they would take captive the bird and then
what you're saying.
Look at it in a cage and talk about it. But this was coming out saying like, let's look at them in their natural habitat and observe in this way.
Look at something in the setting that it's meant to be in.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And this was done during the same time with geese. There was a lot of studies with, they're called gooselings when they're babies, which is so cute.
Gooselings or goslings?
Is it goslings?
Yeah.
Like Ryan Gosling?
Yeah, I believe that. I believe they're called goslings.
I love that even better.
Yeah.
I read it and I was like, oh, I've never heard that word before.
It's very cute.
It's so cute. Okay, so like goslings, yes. They're the baby geese.
Yeah, the baby geese.
The baby geese, they'll take them away from their mothers, and they'll see that these baby geese will attach to whatever they're given the opportunity to attach to. So researchers were allowing them to attach to them, researchers themselves. They even had them attached to cardboard. I mean, this is like the beginning of attachment.
Yeah.
There was a 1960s study where they were looking at rhesus monkeys, and it's a very famous study where they had a cage. They put the monkey in a cage. They had a cloth surrogate mother, so a mother that was covered in some cloth, and then they had a mother that was wire that had food for the monkey. And when given the choice, the monkey would stay about 22 hours on this cloth monkey, just kneading it with its little cute paws and really looking for comfort from that cloth. Yeah. And then it would only go over to the wire to receive food for the seconds it needed food. And the whole research study was, where does attachment lie? Is it within food or is it within comfort? And they found it was within comfort. So now it's
not about survival then.
No, it's not. It's all about comfort and love and affection and feeling soothed internally.
This is already making me think of like, okay, well then what soothes you? Like what do you need to be soothed with internally? But sorry, continue. My bad.
This is perfect. You're thinking like Bowlby and Ainsworth.
There we go.
They were like, we are trying to understand attachment, but we need to take them in their natural environment with their mothers. In the case of this research study, it has been replicated with other caretakers, and watch how a child is soothed by the mother. So that's what they did, and that's how the study started. They took toddlers into a room. They had the mother walk in holding the toddler. There was a stranger in the room. The research study is called The Strange Situation. And the mother's holding the baby. The baby feels a little bit like, what's going on here? Who's this stranger? There's a ton of toys. After a few minutes, of course, the baby's like, I'm cool. The toddler starts to play with the toys. And then they put the toddler under extreme stress, which for a toddler means mother leaves the room for about 3 minutes.
Okay.
And they observed the children's reactions, and this is where attachment style began.
Cool. Okay.
This is the birth, baby.
This is it.
This is it. So if you can understand, they looked at toddlers and said, how did this toddler respond when their comfort left? What's their attachment to their mother? Do they freak out? And when the mother returns, are they instantly soothed?
Right. Because that's like the ultimate comfort for a toddler. Right, for us as little babies, it's your mom, right? Being with your mom. So then, what are they?
It's necessary for survival.
Yeah.
Toddlers don't have enough vocabulary to explain what's really going on internally. So they cry, and the mother interprets what's going on,
right?
And then takes care of that baby. And those are moments of connection and moments of security.
And that's that comfort piece, right? Like comfort for survivability, not like survivability from that food example, right? With the wires, with the monkey, but the comfort being the thing that needs to be there throughout in order to have a successful, I guess, growth as a life. Yeah.
Right? So they looked at the different toddler experiences of if a mother comes in after the 3 minutes. So in most of the cases, the babies will instantly cry, of course. And then when the mother comes in, that's what they're really looking for. So in secure attachment styles, when the mother leaves, the baby...
So secure is one of the attachment styles.
What
are them?
Of course, yes. Yeah. The three that I really talk about, there is a fourth, but the three I really pay attention to is avoidant attachment, secure attachment, and anxious attachment.
Cool.
Okay. Secure falls in about 70% of the population.
Interesting.
Secure.
Wow. And would you only have one typically?
It's a spectrum.
Cool.
Total spectrum. Depends on your relationship you're currently in. But people tend to lean a little bit into one. Secure attach is not that any are better than any, but is the goal, right?
It's like the healthier of the three.
Yeah. A secure attached baby, when the mother leaves, the baby begins to cry. And then when the mother comes back, the baby is still crying, as it should. And the mother picks up the baby. And then the baby quickly can be soothed. And then it can resume playing. So their amygdala, the fear center in their brain, they're able to go from fear, my comfort is here and I trust this comfort, back down to I'm okay, I'm safe.
Right. They can make that switch, that transition. easily.
Avoidant, which I reside within, and I have
the glasses here.
Just a little lift of the glasses. I resign as a avoidant, leaning more towards secure now with tons of work and a couple little key things you've already slipped in. I'm curious how this sits with you. Avoidant attached babies, when the mother leaves, they do cry, but they'll often stifle this cry. They'll hold it in. So their heart will still be beating. They'll still be sweating. They'll still be having a lot of internal emotions that are noticeable to researchers. But they have learned that it's not okay to cry. It's not smart to, because they don't get the attention or support when they behave in this way.
Right.
So they don't. And when the mother returns, they know to not show that they were in distress, because when they are in distress, the parent tends to turn their back on them anyways.
I see what you're getting at with like what I was talking about. Yeah, I find that interesting. That the way I'm describing how I like see conflict, like I don't want to have it, because to me, if you want to say bringing up the problem, like that would be like the crying in the situation with the toddler, right? Like expressing that I'm not okay right now is sometimes difficult for me to do. So that does sound avoidant in those moments. I find that weird. Like if I were to look at it as like how I was as a kid, I cried when I needed to cry, but my mom has told me that I didn't cry often, but I never felt as though like I couldn't with my mom. I don't know.
And this is what's so interesting about it is, again, we were looking at 18-month-olds. So we don't have memories to tell us what we were like.
I don't know.
And I do this great experiment with my clients where I'll say, let's go back to the beginning. And by the beginning, I mean when your parents met. And let's look at what was going on in their life. What do you know about their experiences when they met? How can you assume they were feeling? Right? So for me, my parents were 18 when they had my brother and 21 when they had me. They were, not educated. They were living in low socioeconomic status. And how could I assume they felt? Well, stressed. So every time I cried, I could imagine my poor mother, and this is nothing against her. I love the woman, but that was probably pretty annoying and heavy and an extra thing on her already full plate. So me crying would have been taught to me at 18 months to not do that.
Right.
And so I had to go back to what was going on for my parents for me to understand why I was avoidant, not going through a list of symptoms that I found and going, well, this, and they do also align, but it becomes more powerful and I can sit more in. I was avoidant when I understand also what was going on for my life at 18 months and what can I assume was going on during that time, because now you're actually using the research to fuel your answer to what attachment style you think you
to try and figure it out.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there's a third.
And I'm curious about that, the anxious then attachment style. And I mean, I guess a part of also why I'm a little bit curious about anxious attachment and hearing you describe avoidant? That's it. Okay. Avoidant attachment style. To think about like where your parents met, I can't do that. My father was a sperm donor, so I don't have a parents meeting. So it's a weird circumstance to think of like, how did my mom approach being a mother? I know some background with her and like what led to me being born. Taking what I do know about what my mom's journey to being a mother was, I can imagine there was like a level of determination in becoming a mother and really wanting that to work without having a partner and deliberately choosing to not have a partner in this, which I find interesting in my mom's own life. But how that affects me and how I view relationships, I don't even know sometimes where to dig into it. But anyways, avoidant attachment, anxious attachment is what you're going to get into, but I'm curious about that and how that might relate to me.
These are my cuties. I love anxious attached people so much because they're just a lot, and they're a lot in the most fun way. Because what happens with anxious attached babies is they cry a lot, right? The mother leaves and they're crying a lot, but when the mother returns, they don't stop crying either. And for them, it's because they don't trust what's going on. They don't trust that the mom is even back. And
are they going to leave again?
Exactly. And for how long are they back? And what does this mean? And that ends up transferring into adult relationships. And so in this study, they went and tested the same children at 5 years old. Not surprisingly, the kids that were in secure attachment had more social capabilities in kindergarten, more ease of leaving the family unit and going on to have more independence as school began. And then you can see this in adults, how it plays out.
No kidding. And this is just a thought from hearing these different examples of attachment styles. How often do you see an outside influence kind of sway your attachment style? Can that happen? And like, how quickly does that happen to someone? Like, let's say someone has a secure attachment style. Does it take just one bad relationship to break that, to push them out of that attachment?
Oh, wow. That's a beautiful question. I have been taught in some of my courses I've taken on attachment to ask clients, if you were to be hospitalized, who would the first phone call you would make is? Or if you want to go more positive, if you were to get the job of your dreams, who's the first phone call you make?
I like the hospital one more. It's more intense.
It's more intense.
Higher
it's
stakes
dark,
here.
Right?
Yeah.
But they say that if there's, if you have an answer to that, and a lot of the times it's someone's spouse that they answer, that now moved, right? Now your attachment is your spouse. So yes, your attachment style does change per who the new attachment figure is and how they are teaching you and informing you about your attachment style. However, I would say if you are really cognizant of this, like, okay, I'm an avoidant attachment, and you get with another avoidant attachment, right? That's not going to further push you down I'm now even.
Yeah, okay.
Because you're just you, if you're cognizant of it, if you're aware. Now, if you're not aware of what's going on, you have no idea, why am I acting this way? Where does this come from? You can be swayed into behaving in different ways and conforming to different styles. But I think nowadays there's a body of information out, and so many people do have a general idea of what they are, and it would be easier to spot when they're rapidly changing to another attachment style. Like, oh, I was anxious. I used to text people all the time, but people have called me clingy, and so now I don't talk about my feelings at all. So you could end up going into avoidant, but your inclination towards anxious attached is still going to be in the back of your mind. Are they going to leave me? Do they think I'm this? So you're still behaving anxious or thinking anxious. You're just behaving avoidant. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. I was like starting to laugh just as you were saying, like, are they going to leave me? And I was starting to laugh in my head. It's like, would you love me if I'm a snail? Like that whole one, it's great. Well, thanks for a very brief summary of what the attachment styles are.
So brief.
If there's all this research around, and there's a fourth. What is the fourth, just to go surface level?
Of course, disorganized. This is in extreme cases, approximately 5% of the population. Extreme cases of abuse in the household, incarceration in the household. These babies would do all sorts of funky baby things when their parent would leave, slam their head against the wall, throw toys.
No shit.
Defecate on the floor, all sorts of really, really disorganized behavior.
Yeah.
And I don't touch as much on this one only because it is such a small portion of the population. But it is one for sure.
Interesting. Yeah. And disorganized in the sense of like an unexpected response too. If so many or so much of the population, 95% fits into those other three categories, with 70% being secured, right? Like that's like an anomaly, right? That would be pretty jarring to see even in a research setting. I can only imagine. So taking like what they are, right? Now we've kind of gone over that. Why is it important in a relationship setting to understand that? And maybe even to understand first yourself and like what your attachment style is, but like what value is there in respecting what your partner's attachment style is and knowing what it is and them knowing what it is? This is a bit of a layered question, but why does that matter? Why is that important?
Yeah. I think we're already calling back to one of the first things we said in this episode, which is you have to consider, what is my intentionality with getting into a relationship? And for me, and for many of my clients, in some form or another, they say they want to experience happiness in their life, right? And healing in their life. Well, to get towards healing in a relationship, it's good if you both have a understanding of what are you coming in with? What's your stuff?
What's the baggage you bring, if you want to use that term?
Yeah, what's the baggage you bring? And can we join together to move ourselves into a secure attached? Can I identify your behaviors wow, honey, I went out for the night and you texted me 17 times asking me what I was doing. And then I came home and you berated me with questions about who I was with. This is your anxious attachment style showing up, which means you were feeling abandoned. And I want you to know, I tried to respond to those, but I was also attempting to be present with my friends. And it doesn't mean I don't love you any less. Doesn't mean I'm planning on leaving you. I was just busy for the night.
Yeah.
Boom.
Right.
Right? They feel seen. They feel heard. They also had a mirror placed on them. And I want a relationship where somebody gives me a mirror from a kind and loving location, but I want a mirror.
Right.
So I can see my tendencies.
And so you can know that your partner sees them too. That you're not crazy. Like, am I crazy for feeling this way? Am I crazy for thinking this? I ask myself that sometimes,
No, you're just a baby.
Yeah.
That's why I tell my partner whenever he's being a mess, I'm like, you're just a baby. He's 10 years older than me or 9 years older than me. I'm always like, you're still a baby, honey. Like, you're responding from your baby self. And I love your baby self. But we don't have, we're not going to be mean to the baby here. But we're going to acknowledge that we're being our baby self. We're being our scared self. We're worried that if we bring up a conflict, you're going to leave us, which is just your little baby. Yeah. Worried that you're going to be left.
And trying to express that in the way it knows how.
Trying to express it like an adult usually. Just compartmentalizing and hiding and all the tricks that we put up. But can someone point out those tricks and say, oh, sweetie, I noticed.
To latch on for a second to that example that you gave of the person who's texting their partner while they're out. Is that wrong? Is wrong even an okay word to use to describe that? Maybe you would use a different word to describe it. Should that be changed? Should that be improved on? Should that be adjusted?
I would say it is data. It's information.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would go, wow, thank you so much for providing me information. Or even say that to yourself at the end of the night. You look at your text, and usually I see this in my clients. They feel a lot of shame after doing something like that. Like, oh, I don't like that I acted that way. I must have looked this way towards them. And I go, oh, but what an opportunity to learn about yourself.
Yeah.
To see how your anxious attachment style spirals you out of your truest form, which is love, and puts you into panic. It's data. And the more we use the information and we reflect on it, the closer we're going to come to growth and getting out of it, because it doesn't feel good.
Right. And then earlier when we were talking about the attachment styles, like there is work that you can do to move towards a secure attachment style. And I guess in that kind of scenario, right, like it would be a lot to ask someone to just suddenly like cold turkey stop. And then of course, if the partner responded in a certain way and was like, yo, don't fucking text me like that would hurt too. And then that makes you feel like, okay, so what I am doing is wrong. But there's a medium to that, a middle ground that can be reached in the way that you would approach that. Like I've seen this and that's why I'm asking about, why I'm curious about it, is like, you could just say like, I'm going to be out, the person who's out, the partner that's out in this situation, I'm going to be out for a couple hours. I'll text you as soon as I'm on my way home. Like, like giving that kind of like confirmation. I'm just going to be with my friends. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Maybe that would put that person at ease rather than needing to send all those texts. Absolutely.
And the person who receives the don't do that to me, you're crazy, all that stuff, that person can easily say, you know what, this is my abandonment wound. This is my attachment style showing. And I'm interested in a partnership of movement towards growth and healing. And your response to me right now doesn't place me on that trajectory.
Not at all.
That's not what a relation, and that's where I'm, starting from the beginning, intentionality. Now that can be course corrected. You can say to your partner, this is my attachment. This is my abandonment showing up. This is my, whatever. And I need this from you going forward if we're going to be in a healing relationship, which is what the type of love I'm looking for is.
And getting to a place where you could say that to a partner and ask that to a partner, that's a whole other story. But that's where things like therapy, meditation, self-reflection, journaling, that kind of stuff can come in and can help get you to that place where you can then have that as a response to that thing that would otherwise, especially I'm sure younger people, right? Like who haven't done the work yet, right? If you were met with that response, you may just honestly think like, shit, I can't be reacting this way.
I'll be left.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're leaving yourself when you don't respond like that. You know what I mean? When you take somebody else's, you can't do that, you're crazy, and you believe that.
That's them.
That's them, honey.
That's not you.
That's not you.
Mm-hmm.
You're allowed to have wounds.
Mm-hmm.
It makes us beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to heal them, find somebody that's willing to do the work with you and heal them with you.
Yeah.
But don't let somebody else judge you for your attempt at healing.
Mm-hmm. And if someone's not going to be willing to do the work with you,
yeah, there's a lot of people on Hinge.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue. Oh my God, I was gonna ask. To your point of the Hinge study that came out that was saying that, or Hinge, I guess, funded, backed, whatever study with the New York Times that came out that said that 91% of millennials want a partner who is going to therapy. To that effect, it makes me think of pickiness, which we talked about in our first call that we had with each other. Pickiness in your partner. Should you be picky about the partner that you're with, your romantic partner?
Yeah. It was so funny. My partner and I were driving up today, and I said, honey, should you be picky with your partner? Mm. And he goes, what? And I asked again, and he goes, I mean, you're picky with the toppings you put on your sandwich.
If you can be picky with that.
I started laughing, but I do a great exercise with my clients that come in and say, I'm really looking for love or a relationship, where I have them write out every single characteristic that they are looking for in a partner. And I've done this exercise myself, and I can tell you that my partner is a exact manifestation of that list.
Wow.
But here's the caveat. But because I went out on so many dates that once somebody did not fit that list, I was confident enough to say, you're a great person, but I'm not going to further investigate whether this should be a relationship because I have this list that I'm trusting in. So yes, I do think people should be extremely picky. I think everyone should sit down in a deeply mindful way and say, what am I looking for in a partner? Down to it all. What am I looking for their religious background, their spiritual background, their proclivity to partying? People should ask questions. What kind of friends do I want this person to have? You can be vain if vanity and appearance is a high value of yours. What do you want them to look like? Right? Do it all and put it down in a way that comes from your heart space, not from the values that society has.
Yeah. Told you that you should be looking for.
Yeah, exactly. Really sit in your heart space. And if you can do this and you can align yourself with what am I looking for, you'll notice when the wrong people enter in. And what I find so much is people come and they say, well, I'm dating this person and it's okay, or it's going good, but they're not this, or, and I always wish, and I don't as a therapist, but I wish I could say, then why? This is the most important decision of your life, honey. You have your whole one life to be two separate humans choosing to live side by side.
And this comes back to that sacredness of what a relationship is and how big of a decision it really is. To pick a person, and it is okay, I guess, to be picky. Do you think that, I mean, obviously you do. I mean, you said you did, that you can be picky to that extent. Like, how long did that take you to come up with that list anyways? Like, what did that look like?
I was a couple therapy sessions with my therapist. We went over it, and he asked me why and how does it feel to say that, and why and how does it feel to say that. I probably went on, 100 dates. It's tricky, is it okay to be that picky? It's how I chose to do it. Now, some people might have a much more narrow list. Some people, I just want a good person. I want a person who wants to be a good father and a stable provider. And that's perfect. And that's plentyfold out there.
That's interesting. Okay.
That's plentyfold out there. It's not bad to have your list be short. Mine was long. That's because it's my style of what I needed from somebody. I had a lot of criteria to meet. And I believe that because I put that intention out, I did find it. I think other people can. There's 7 billion people on this earth. And
8 billion now.
8 billion people on this earth. We've been talking. So there's probably a billion more.
For sure.
And there's so many apps and so many opportunities. And I want people to at least try the experiment of being picky. At least try the experiment of looking for what they want. Even if that's not what ends up being, it's not a failed attempt because you got closer to your values. You got a better idea of what you're looking for. And often, and this is what's so beautiful, often that list is a reflection of what you're trying to become and what you want.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, when I asked you like what your list looked like and how it came to be, right? Like why you think that being that picky is good. I think it is because to me, I wouldn't want a list that big. Right, but you saying that that's okay, like that's cool, you know, like that makes me feel better in my head. But like, okay, like, it's okay not to have a big list.
Oh my gosh, I've had friends who are like, I just want the guy to be sporty, I want the guy to be outdoorsy, and I want him to be funny. And I'm like, perfect.
Good.
That is the best list ever.
Yeah.
That's the best. Then go find that. And then you know what? If you go out on a date with the guy and he tells you, I'd rather go to a club than on a hike, and he tells you that he's, you know, allergic to grass, and then he tells you that he threw up going for a walk the other day, like
That's not the one.
That's not the one. But what people do is they go, oh, he's hot.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
He's 6 foot.
Yeah. I checked a couple boxes. Yeah. It's but I think in one of our conversations in like a previous episode, I had asked the question with whoever was here. I don't remember who it was at the time. It must have been Jeff. He must have been there. But I had asked if we thought that maybe there wasn't like the one to meet, that there is a one. And you describing this long list made me think like, oh, like there's got to be the one person there. But still, there could be a number of people that would meet all of those items on even a long list, you know? And it's a matter of, I think, like when you find someone that I guess checks off that list, and for me, it would be a shorter list. But if it checks off that list, stick in it, you know, like recognize it and stick in it and be okay with it. And then learn to overcome and grow and develop as a partnership, right? I think that would be the way to go. Yeah. How do you feel about that the one versus a one?
I'm so glad you brought that up. So glad, because there's one of my favorite quotes by the former monk Jay Shetty. He says, if you do not take the time to reflect, your distractions become your values by default. If you're not taking the time to slow down and ask yourself, what does love mean to me? You are going to end up believing that love is Cinderella, soulmate, somebody is your one. And that's because that is the default distracted value that we are told since infancy.
That's the societal view that gets pressed onto you.
Such BS.
Yeah.
Such BS, honey. There can't be a the one or the, I mean, this is opinion based, of course, but I don't buy that. I don't feel invigorated when someone says to me, this is my soulmate, he's the one, or they're the one. I always see that and I'm like, what do you like? I love asking after. What do you like about them? Why'd you decide to marry them?
You watch Love is Blind at all?
So remember that quote by Jay Shetty. No, this is great. Remember that quote by Jay Shetty. If you don't take the time to reflect, your distractions become your values by default. I do not watch any reality television. In fact, I don't watch like nearly any television.
Props to you.
Big book reader. But I can't let, I'm too susceptible.
The gist, because I've been watching this.
I heard Nick Lachey and
oh yeah,
they ran it. Okay.
But the gist is that you have conversations with people in these pods, and you like go to different ones and talk to different people and start to like gravitate towards the same ones that you want, and you don't see them, right? The whole idea is that you take out the physical side of it, right? Love is blind. But I just get mad watching it because I think it's absolute horseshit. These people come out of these pods, is what they're called, right? And then once they leave the pods, then they meet the person who they've chosen to be with in person.
What an anxiety-provoking situation.
Absolutely. And like they've at this point proposed, by the way. Like you've now talked to these people for like 2 weeks, and now you're engaged to be married. That's how you like get out of the pods in the first place. You have to like propose.
Forced proposal.
Basically. And then like they're doing like, you know, like confessionals, like they're talking to the camera, right? And they're saying like they're off to the side, they're doing their own thing, getting a little interview. And they're saying things like, oh, this is my soulmate. Like I've met this person and like I've never felt this way about somebody.
The generic lines.
Bullshit. It feels like you're just telling yourself that to make yourself believe that. And I think that though that can present itself in real life relationships. Let's say you don't watch TV, you don't do anything like that. Someone in a relationship that maybe isn't the right one might be trying to convince themselves that this is checking off their boxes on their list.
Using the catchphrases.
Yeah. Doing something to tell themselves like, yeah, this is it. This is the one. It's got to be, you know? It doesn't have to be.
I was talking to a friend and she says, I really know the person you're with is your person. And I said, why is that? And she goes, because when I asked you what you feel about him, you said he is the most interesting person you've ever met. And I think that's my version of the one.
Yeah.
He is the most interesting person I've ever met. I'm fascinated by his mind. I'm fascinated by his interests. And I'm fascinated by his intricacies. As a therapist, I don't understand him. But I do.
It's not working.
It's just something's up. But I'm like, this is so exciting. And there's so many flavors. And, we're in a multicultural relationship. So he's from a different place in the world. And he just has a different outlook on things. And I appreciate that. And I think that she's getting on what we're getting at. When she heard me say that novelty of saying somebody's your one because they're interesting, or somebody is the one because you're so comfortable in their presence, or that feels like, something different than those mainstream sentences, is when you're like, there might be something behind this, because this person is reflecting on their relationship and giving it a description that's unique to them, which it should be, because it's love.
Yeah. That's great.
I'm not gonna watch Love Is Blind.
Don't. Please don't. I barely want to, but now I see it and I'm hooked. I gotta see what happens. You know what I mean? There's only 2 more episodes.
I heard it's Seattle.
It is.
It's Seattle now.
Yeah.
Some of my friends know the people and have gone on dates with some of the dudes and stuff. I got a text from one of my friends. She's like, "Oh my God, he stood me up and now he's on there." And I'm like, "Oh God."
Dodged a bullet.
Yeah, for real.
Oh man. On that point then of apps. Right, you brought up apps a couple times in our conversation. Hinge at the very beginning with their New York Times study. Are dating apps healthy?
God.
I have my own views on this.
Yeah, can I flip it around? Do you mind?
Yeah.
So hey, on the topic of dating apps, are they healthy?
Yes, I think that they are. I have my own reservations of them, and I'm glad I'm done with them. Oh. If I can say that. The person that I'm with at the moment, I say at the moment just for reference to my audience, the person I'm with, I met them on a dating app. I met them 5 years ago. We weren't together the whole time. It wasn't until the end of last year that we got back together, after some real significant work and me being in another relationship, and without going crazy into detail, realizing that the person I'm with right now was the one that I still wanted to be with. There's something there that was holding me back. I confronted it, and a part of it was I'm afraid of having a difficult conversation, and I was just not wanting to do it. And that will be a story that if I get to telling that, I will tell it with my partner. They would come on if they would ever be open to talk.
Send me that for sure.
But that's
I'm following
long down the line. Yeah. And that would be if it ever even happens. Now, and that's perfect. I'm glad that you're there. And that would be if it was even something that we wanted to air out to the world. You know what I mean? Why is our business somebody else's? But
because I want it to be.
Because you want it to be. It's content. But I battle with that too sometimes. Whenever I do talk about my relationship or relationships in the past as well, I hesitate a little bit, because I think I don't want someone to be taken out of context for one, and I don't want to say something just because it's content, So that's why I don't get into crazy detail. But the long story short of it is that I avoided having a difficult conversation while we had been together. I chose to leave the relationship rather than have the difficult conversation, and spent time apart, thought I was good, thought I had moved on, met somebody else who was amazing, fantastic person. That's another thing to your point of you're really great, you date people and you are really great. Nothing wrong with this person. There was just something that was bringing me back to this other person. Right. And so I had to, and I'm very much in love with this person. I have been very much in love with this person. And I guess I had been, even when I was telling myself I wasn't, you know what I'm saying?
How lucky is she?
How lucky am I?
How lucky are you?
That's
how lucky
is
your ex to, that's a pain. That's a grievance. It sucks to be left for someone else. It does. But it's also a gift, an opportunity to find somebody who is their person, who will think about them as their person, who will say that she is the most interesting person ever, right? And not be interested in someone else. You gave her a great gift, an opportunity to experience break up and learn and grow. And then now you're in this new, old but new partnership where it's just this, you got your eagle eye on them. And that's a beautiful opportunity. And then it's so noticeable how happy are you. Like,
and it feels like we like pick back up where we left off.
You lit up when you start talking about her. And in the call we did too, you were just, I'm like, oh, this is a man in love.
She's all right. No, she's great. But yeah, and like learning from not having those difficult conversations to that point of with this person who is now my ex, I did tell them the truth of what I was feeling, right? I didn't, because I felt like I left the person I'm with now hanging. You know, I felt like I left them without a real reason and like a real understanding of why I was leaving the relationship. And I felt like I can't do that again now to this person. So I had to tell them the truth and the what made me uncomfortable, right? And shared that with them. And hopefully at least then you're right. Like they can leave knowing the real reason why this wasn't working. And it wasn't a shot at them. It was that I need to be with this other person.
Well, you also healed your avoidant attachment style in that. So,
in that way.
Yeah, and a quick sidebar. For anxious people, a great way to heal that is to self-soothe, okay? So when you're feeling something intense, you use yourself as that parent figure. You treat yourself like the cloth monkey. You return inward. You do things that bring you joy, not distract, like have an app open while the Netflix is playing on the background and maybe you have a radio in the other room, not distract your thoughts out of it, but go inward and say, I feel best when I'm doing yoga. I feel best in the shower. I feel best when I'm journaling. I feel best when I'm walking. And go do one of those when you're in a spiral of your anxious attachment style. And for avoidant people, when you're noticing you're in a relationship and you have this emotion or this experience that you're withholding from your partner, usually from a fear of abandonment or a fear that any distress within the relationship will make them hate you, whatever your reason, is opening up, leaning into that. So for anxious, you want to lean out, take care of self. Avoidant, as scary as it is, you want to lean in.
Yeah.
And I've had to do this in my own partnership. You know, I have to talk about my traumas, my life, right? We're together. He's my human. And what happens is I open up and I tell him something that I think he's either going to find unattractive about me, or he's going to leave me if he knows that I'm more fragile than I appear. And I get shaky, physically shaky after I'm done telling him something. Yeah. You know? And what I have to do is lean into that. And I end up actually saying to him, and I'm shaking right now telling you this. And I just keep...
It's hard for me to do this.
It's hard for me to do this. And by opening that with somebody who can sit with you and is hopefully doing the work enough, they can go, all right, and you're healing that. So you healed part of your avoidant by sharing what was going on that you otherwise would have kept a deep, dark secret.
So yeah, long story short is I do think that apps are great.
Oh yeah, apps.
That's what started.
Oh yes, those apps.
We met on Tinder. And at the time I had been dating around, right? And then we met and I knew on our first date, it was like, yeah, you're awesome. You know?
The beauty of them too.
It was a great first date, yeah.
You can filter.
And so, yeah, to that point then, that I feel like they do have a place. The reason why I feel like I'm happy I'm done with them is because I wouldn't want to go on so many dates. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that, and I know that you said that you've been on a number of dates, right? Quite a few, but
it's
to me it was like I was like done. Yeah, I was like done with meeting people. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm like, if I weren't sure, like that's how it would have played out, but I'm happy it had played out the way that it did. Like I haven't been on a dating app, I think, like really since then. I think maybe I re-downloaded it for like a short period of time. Probably following like when me and this person had originally like split up, right? But yeah, I'm glad I don't have to deal with him. I think that's all it is. And Kabir, I know he's not here. I'll say it in the intro. I would have said that he's sick and he's not here, but like Kabir's single and like enjoys being single. You know, it's more of a deliberate choice, and he knows that he's not ready for relationships. He doesn't want to be in one even. Like he just doesn't, at least right now, right? And he's acknowledged that. He said that it's like a right now thing. He's got no problem with the apps. You know, it's like I see, and it seems like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. And I want to tell all the sweethearts, you know, listening, every person listening too, I know rejection sucks.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard. And I'm not going to play it up like you get to just make this list and get on these apps and all these people are going to flock your way and it's going to work. It doesn't. And there are many times that you're going to be rejected. There are many times that you're going to reject. There's going to be a lot of heartache in it. But again, circling back to that first point, it's sacred. Love is sacred. Failure is sacred. Don't be afraid to fail at dating. Don't be afraid of the rejection. It's not because of you. It's because it's not supposed to be you too. It's not because of you. It's just not supposed to be you too. You know? Let it hurt. People get so afraid of the pain that is rejection, and that's fair. It's intense. But it's a part of the human experience. If you live life going, all right, I want to feel every emotion on the spectrum, and I want to know who am I when I'm feeling those. So that means you need to experience depression to understand who am I when I'm depressed? Who am I when I'm joyful? Who am I when I'm excited? Who am I when I'm rejected? Who am I when I'm abandoned? And can you learn and grow through those and see them as an opportunity of self-exploration? So when you get rejected and you go home and you eat a bag of Doritos and you watch Love is Blind and you're like, well, these people can do it. And then you're filling out an application for Love is Blind at 2 a.m. You're learning about yourself. It's okay, you know? And the best relationships I've ever seen are the ones who've had the worst heartbreaks or terrible dates or maybe bad partnerships. I'm divorced. My partner is similar. We both had pasts of people that we swore were the one. And ironically, I was the girl saying he's the one. Shotgun wedding. I thought all the stuff. And that's where
you were on Love is Blind.
Like no, I was on TLC 90 Day Fiance. I married a foreigner, brought him over, and then anyways. But it's on my TikTok. But I was that person, which is why I speak so confidently about it now. You know what I mean? I'm not saying like, oh, don't be somebody who says they're your soulmate. I'm telling you, as a person who once said someone is my soulmate and understood how those words trick you because they're not necessarily coming from you, because they're literally not coming from you. It's a coined term that could basically have TM at the end of it. I'm sure some jeweler has it as their slogan. It's not you. And you can get tricked by that and end up accepting behaviors that you don't deserve because they are the one.
So is it healthy then to go through that process? It sounds like it is.
I would be really intentional with the pain. I remember during my divorce lying on my bed in fetal position sobbing, and at the end of my sob, I don't know if anybody else gets this, but you was like getting like a coughing fit kind of in your sob where you'd start coughing, so you're no longer crying, but you're like dying essentially. And I was like coughing up my lung like a hairball of trauma. And I was sitting there, and as soon as I got done, it was like a wheezing breath, and something clicked, and I realized that this was the same reaction I had after my first breakup. And I'm like, oh, this is me in grief. And let me tell you the power of understanding this. I'm fortunate enough that my parents were very young when they had me. And so I will live to be of later age when my parents pass, if I'm lucky. I can bet I'll be on the bed sobbing like that because I now understand grief. And so when I'm there on the bed, and I hope if the universe has it, my partner who I have now will be beside me, and he goes, are you good? Because I'm coughing up that hairball of trauma that's been reoccurring after every loss in my life. I can say, no, baby, this is what I do when I grieve.
This is how it looks to grieve.
This is my grieving.
Everybody grieves different.
And how do you know if you don't go through it?
That's at first when you were saying like to look at that emotional spectrum and need to understand yourself with each emotion, right? Like to understand how you are when you're depressed, you have to be depressed. You have to see what it's like. At first I wasn't like quite grasping that concept, but now you're saying this and how you saw yourself in your first breakup and then after divorce, and recognizing, being intentional about looking at that and realizing, oh, that's how I grieve. That's huge. That would be massive in just understanding how you are with anything. And to take that then to extrapolate this and push it out and look at, okay, now dating. Let's say you go on 100 dates. After each one that fails, if you're not hitting that point, couldn't have been that bad. You know what I mean? Like when you're now looking at like rejection, right? If you're thinking of how like rejection is not terrible, don't fear rejection. If it's not putting you at a point of grief and understanding what for you grief is, you're okay. you're still moving. You know, like that loss isn't something that is so traumatic that you can't move on from, right? That's
and now you
incredible.
understand your tendency of being rejected.
Mm-hmm.
This is me when I'm rejected. I eat Doritos and watch reality television. That is my rejection self.
And I get through that.
So that's what I do when I'm rejected. That's what I do when I grieve. And you have different place points. This is what I mean by the spectrum. You have different, all right, this is me at rejected. This is me. And it doesn't make it necessarily easier. It still sucks. You still feel cruddy after all of those, but you know yourself more.
Yeah. It's funny, like, it's too bad you don't watch some Netflix and stuff like that. I mean, have you ever watched The Office? Like, you ever
I did watch The Office. Fair. Okay, yeah.
But there's the episode where Michael is dating the woman from the bar, and she was cheating on her husband to be with Michael. Okay. And so he was the mistress, but he kept going with it for a while. But then he broke it off because he knew it was wrong and he left it. Pam had prepared for that because she knows Michael more than Michael knows him, and she had prepared for that and bought him like a couple tubs of ice cream. They got the TV in the multi-purpose room, the staff room, the meeting room, whatever.
Meeting room had so much going on.
Yeah, so much. And got that ready for him. And then when he was supposed to be going to break up and came back and didn't go for the ice cream, she knew something was up.
You didn't break up.
Yeah. And then when he did, he went and he got the ice cream. It's like that was his way of processing the end of that relationship, right? Like that was his way of getting through grief. And she knew that was how he was going to respond. But you can know that about yourself.
And she responded with love and nurturing. She knew how he was going to react, and you can start to learn how you're going to react and take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And go, oh, and I do this all the time, you know, call yourself, and men have a harder time with this for sure, but call yourself nice names. Give yourself a nickname or two that you use in moments of defeat. A good one, ace or chief or boss. Yeah, boss. We said it at the same time. You feel me? Like boss, any of those. Yeah. I call myself baby girl. And so when that stuff is going on and I have pain points in my life, I've had traumas happen to me that are not fair and should never happen to a person. But then you say those things and you go, hey, baby girl, I see you. Hey, boss, I see you. You just got rejected by the 5th chick on that app, or you haven't gotten one match this month and you feel really down about yourself. And you're going to learn what feeling down about yourself is because you're in it. So you might as well, I always tell my clients this, don't waste the sadness.
Use it,
honey.
Yeah, learn from it, right? I wish I knew that, you know. I do know that now, and our audience knows that now. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, this comes back to what you said at the start of our conversation, being intentional about all this, right? And being intentional about how you reflect and what you are learning about yourself, right? That's massive. If you can understand what gets you through those moments, you won't be afraid to run into those moments again.
And not even necessarily what gets you through. I love that point, but I want to dance with you a little bit because I hear people say what to get me through, which in a undercurrent of that is getting over it, right? And I really, yes, gets through, but also just who are you in it, right? You might not get through it. I have clients who are still bereaving relationships from 10, 15 years ago and as if it were still there. So there might not be a complete and total get through, but it's about going in and knowing this is what's going on.
Recognizing that. Wow. That sounds
Thanks
incredibly
for letting me dance with
you. Yeah, of course. I like that you're right. And maybe not getting through.
Maybe
right?
not.
Just what is it now? You know,
maybe you don't heal that anxious attached in this life. But if you have a partner that sees it and loves you for it, and you live a long and loving relationship with one another, constantly texting them, freaking out, worrying about abandonment, but they're loving you through it, that's good enough. Yeah. That's better.
Yeah.
That's an alternative I would be okay with.
Absolutely.
I don't have to be healed to be okay.
No kidding. Thank you for all of that. That's a good lesson. That's a good lesson. And I'm thinking about even my own piece that I've talked about a couple of times here, like being afraid of conflict. Like the next time I'm having a conversation that I'm needing to lean into in order to get through, right, to have out there, maybe I will think about like, how am I feeling right now? Like what's afterwards, reflect on it, be intentional. What was my body doing? Was I having like a physical reaction to this? How was I like carrying myself even body language wise? Was I shutting off? And I'll be more intentional with it and kind of reflect on it so that then now as I approach the next one, I'll know kind of what to expect and how I'm going to react and how I'm going to approach that next tricky conversation. Because there will always be another. That's the other thing too. There will always be something else that you'll need to experience, right? So huge. Thank you.
The people watching the podcast, how many times I fist bumped.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you're watching this, you're seeing me like Jersey Shore, not a show I watch, but I do know, like fist bump and like I'm nodding. Yes, absolutely. And a really powerful tool is, what are the thoughts? What are the thoughts? You know, what are the feelings in your body? What are the thoughts?
Yeah.
Because if every time your partner exits or every time your partner doesn't text you back, you think they're going to leave me, and you think that, at some point you might go, I think this every time. It became less valid.
They haven't left.
Yeah,
look at that data.
Yeah, or maybe people did leave in the past, and so now you're like, but the data shows they do that, which I hear a lot. The data does show. And I'm like, okay, all right. But will it forever? Is it always going to be that way? Because it won't always be anyway of anything.
It can be very hard to not carry over a past relationship into the next. And I know that this isn't like a planned topic of conversation here, but I'm curious about that. Meeting somebody who, let's say you were the one who had negative past relationship experiences. I would imagine, because thankfully I haven't, I would imagine it's scary to do it again. But then from the other side of it, to start being with somebody, start a relationship with somebody who their past hasn't been great, it would be hard to expect them not to look at you and wonder if you're going to do the same.
Yeah. And I really, really work with my clients on building confidence around their past, confidence around their trauma, because I tell people, and this is a kind of silly analogy, but I tell people everyone comes in with baggage, right? And now it depends on what kind of baggage. So imagine you and your partner going on a vacation for the very first time, and you notice that they bring some luggage that has a bunch of holes, and their clothes are falling out of it, and it's duct taped, and they're embarrassed and super shameful of it, and they hide it from you and put it behind, and and then you go to point out that something's falling out and they scream at you, and you're just like, this is now not a good travel experience. Now, imagine you go on a trip with your partner for the very first time, and their bag is taped up pretty well, and there's some stuff falling out of it, and you go to point out something's falling out, and they go, oh my gosh, I know, it's old, and I'm gonna get a new one soon. I'm working on it, okay? It's messy, but let me just push this back in, and we got this. The trip is fine. You're laughing in the line.
Yeah. Oh shit, there's my sock.
There's my sock.
Yeah.
So it's about like, can you go to therapy and find, okay, can I talk about this and build in? And this is where therapy, meditation, and journaling can help you to know yourself enough that you can tell your story without being so embarrassed that the line to the flight is ruined. The relationship is ruined. The day is destroyed.
I heard something from, it was an old manager, and he's been on the podcast before, James Klein. I love him. He's a wonderful father, great guy. He built this table for us. It's a little bit bent.
That's perfect.
I think it's because of the weight of the boom arms. But he said something to me once, which was when I talked to him about stuff that was going on with like my relationship at the time, and we talked about it at work. We had a good relationship. It was nice. That was a little side piece. But he had said that something that he and his wife agreed to early on in their relationship was to not hold each other accountable for their past. You can't expect someone to know how you're going to react to things if it's the first time that you're encountering it with that person. You just can't. You only know your stuff. And then that's where that intentional piece comes in, of understanding how you are going to react to things, right? And understanding what that is and being able to then communicate that to that person, but not saying, okay, now you fit the mold. Now you're there. Now you're one of them. Now you same thing, different person, right? That's not the case. And the intention behind, or the I guess the thought behind how someone acts, maybe it wasn't it's like ill intent. There was no ill intent behind what they did, right? But maybe you're just reacting that way. Now you got to have that conversation with them and let them learn, and maybe they'll respond differently than the person who screwed you over.
We hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you tell somebody, I like that line, don't hold them accountable for the past, but it's so easy to say that, right? So easy to say. My hope is that if you share your past with somebody, you can receive the love you need in being vulnerable and sharing it. And if you do hold them, like, well, my ex cheated on me, so I've been thinking you're going to, can that person look you and say, I understand that you're in pain.
Right.
Right.
Right. And give you the reassurance that they're not. Yeah. I mean, you kind of, I thought of this earlier when we were talking about something that made me think of absorbing a little bit of the other person. I think it was while we were talking about attachment styles, and you can kind of be swayed, right, into different attachment styles with a partner. It made me think in general of something that we also talked about on our call together, which was mistakes that partners can make. So I kind of want to get into that a little bit, like between men versus women as well. What are common mistakes that men make in relationships, starting with men?
Yeah, starting with men, I love it. I have a term I've coined as the departed dilemma.
Sure.
And the departed dilemma, I don't know if you've seen, and the only reason why I've seen this movie, so going back to, I don't watch
Netflix.
I don't watch them, is my partner forced me to. It's one of his favorite movies. And there was this scene with Alec Baldwin talking to Matt Damon, and he says, are you married? And he says, yeah. And he says, are you and your wife good? And he says, yeah. He says, good. Married people are stable. It lets people know that you got money. It lets people blah. And he goes on this big spiel as to saying why men should be married. And I think this is a mistake that happens with men, is that they believe when they find a spouse that it will increase their value in society to be seen as a provider. And so they will attach to a figure to increase their status without too much deliberation on, is this person bringing me towards what my life pursuits actually are?
Oh, that's so interesting. That's already like, I don't mean to interrupt the theory, but yeah, it's like, okay, I've checked off this box. I'm a provider now. I'm meeting that societal standard of like what a man should be in a relationship, in a partnership with a spouse, and get married. But are they actually like fulfilling my needs? Are they actually doing the things for me that I need to be done, whether it's intentional or not, or if it's just based on their character, rather than just, okay, yeah, now I'm a husband. Now I provide. Now I've got a kid. I'm a dad. What's it doing for you? What's that person doing for you?
My partner, he was 36 when we met, single. And I made a joke one day. I was like, whatever, you weren't even with, you didn't find me till you were 36, blah, 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 all this stuff. And he goes, yeah, but I was looking for you until then. I didn't stop until then. I wasn't saying, yeah. He's like, I was trying to figure out who is my person. And I didn't settle until I did, which took until I was this age. I love that. He didn't buy into that idea of, I graduated college, time to find me a wife because that's what I'm supposed to do, because it'll increase my value and it'll show that I'm capable.
So the mistake there, to answer that question about men, is the mistake of jumping straight into it just so that you're meeting that societal bump of, okay, here's the partner, here's the provider. He's got a relationship.
Yeah.
And how that looks then to the other people in their life.
Yeah. And I don't know how your male audience is going to absorb this, only because I'm going to press a little bit and say that men in general, they have a place of hierarchy within the positionality in general. And so it's not that they're meeting that expectation, but they're succeeding it. They've already sort of been at you're good, you're powerful, you're strong status, and then they find a partner and it increases it. And and the reason why I make that difference here is because there is a similarity with the mistake that women make, but that key component of increasing their success or increasing their value is where you'll see a difference between the mistake men make and the mistake women make.
What's the mistake women make in this comparison?
Yeah, Cinderella dilemma.
There we go.
I got a coin.
Yeah.
Cinderella dilemma. Cinderella dilemma is that women seek out partnerships because we are told since we were kids watching Cinderella that your mission is to find love. And once you do, your life has value. you see that difference. A woman will...
It doesn't have value until you're there.
Correct. Men have value already because they're men. But finding a partner shows that they're more successful, higher value, provider. Look at all these things that it adds
It's
to
an
your...
elevation.
Elevates your resume, elevates your life status. But for women, it creates it. Good job. Now you can become a mom. Now you're a wife. Now you're a homemaker or whatever. I don't even know. But there you go. You've reached it. I mean, even since a little girl, we are asked, how many kids do you want? In kindergarten.
Yeah.
Do you want to be a mommy? And we think, well, once I am, I've
done my job.
Did it. I'll be happy. And that's the case for both.
I wonder, like... It's not even a wonder. You can just look at it and see that this is the case, is that in modern life now, we see that as a mistake. I think in the past, that's not a mistake. That's what they did. And everybody did it, you know, like the whole nuclear family, you know what I'm saying? Like that's just what it was. But now, as we've progressed as a society and a culture, we know that like women are more than just mothers. You know, I mean, motherhood is a vital part of life. I absolutely think that it is, but you don't have to just be a mom. So meeting or getting into a relationship just to be able to say like, okay, I'm in a relationship now. I am a wife. Now I have value. Now I can be a mother. Not the right reason to do it. If that's all that you're getting out of that relationship.
Yeah. It circles right back to what former monk Jay Shetty said. Your values are your distractions by default. The advent of technology gave us more perspectives and more values for us to reflect on. The nuclear family was singularly talked about on television, black and white television. It was advertised. It's what you saw. Christianity was the main, and at least in America, and I'm pretty sure Canada, you know, most westernized worlds, it was Christianity value or Christian values. And so those were the staples of a successful and happy life. And then boom, this emergence of information. Technology comes and says, look at all of these alternative lifestyles. Even if we go historically speaking in America, the movement in the 1960s and 70s with psychedelics and people opening and expanding their mind in that way. Women's rights, everything's just really exploded at the same time, where people started saying, is this what I want?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, millennials and, you know, we still are the product of our parents who were that generation,
right,
who were taught that that's what you should have. The picket fence isn't far enough away. So there are many of us that will settle to go up to an ideal that which we have enough information to not believe in anymore. But we do because we're not taking the time to reflect. So that value.
And because I think that there's a risk in it.
Say more.
I feel like there is a risk in going away from what has proven itself to be good enough and get you through life in the past.
Are people happier?
Not necessarily, but maybe that's not what it is, though. Maybe they are looking at it from just a standpoint of like, am I going to have my basic survival needs met if I go down this route? You know what I'm saying? Like if I can find someone who is going to be a provider for the family, I'm then going to have a roof over my head, and I'm going to be able to raise a child, and my child can then go on and figure out how to do something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wonder if that plays into it at all for those who, at our generation, who would still look at that and be like, okay, that is something that will be okay. I can grab onto that, and that's all my relationship needs to be, both for the man and the woman, in this case, making that mistake, you know?
Wow. That was beautiful. God, I love having conversations where you say something and then someone says something and you go, wow. And the
cogs are turning.
The cogs are turning because I'm like, yes, you know, and that in many ways, you're touching on, if that is someone's value, it's still valid.
If their value would be security and knowing that this can let me live a life. Yeah. Maybe that's good enough for that person. Yeah. But I get what you're saying though, which is like there's an opportunity for like greater happiness to explore outside of that.
The specific mistake is settling for somebody to achieve that bump up in success for men, or that meeting of values for women. So settling in any case, it would be a mistake. Just accepting somebody who isn't correct for you because of a myriad of reasons. But yeah. Oof. Yeah. Oof. This is good.
This is good.
This is oof.
But that goes back to that piece of being picky as well, right? Like there is a lot of value in being picky and not settling. I think that is very important, right? You could look at even me saying earlier the like the one or a one, like someone could seeing a one as settling, right? But that's only if you're not checking off those items on your list and being picky with what you want, right? Like there's got to be a requirement for you. These things need to be met. But maybe for some people, it is just having a home and being able to raise a kid, you know?
But then you're not settling.
Then you're not settling, and that's okay.
You're not settling because that's exactly what you wanted.
But I think the unhappiness and like the opportunity for growth and the people who then really need some therapy are the ones who ended up settling, and they realize it years later down the road and went, oh shit.
Yeah.
I've got a kid now.
Yeah. Particularly with men, I worry about this as emotional creatures that tend to suppress that emotional urge. Big stereotype, not becoming as true, but it still is there. And I worry that men aren't noticing. And I can't speak, I'm a woman, I don't know. But I think men aren't noticing. They're getting into a relationship, they're going down the line, and then X amount of years later, they're like, well, is this what I wanted?
I mean, we talked about Kabir a second earlier. And it's this makes me think of him some more too. And it's he's intentionally single, but I think for the right reasons, which is that he doesn't want to settle into something that, like, maybe he isn't sure that that's all that he needs, you know, like a relationship right now isn't all that he needs. And it just makes me think of him a little bit. I wish you were here to expand. Damn it, Kabir, you sick guy. Yeah. Are there any other mistakes that kind of stand out to you that men make or that women make in relationships?
Men, I've noticed as clients, tend to hide their sexual fantasies. I've seen a bit of that, quite a bit of that, for fear of judgment. Women tend to hide their emotional needs as a fear of not being met. So in each case, people are hiding their urges, their emotional or natural primal urges to appease their partner at a cost of a connection. And that would be a large mistake. That is a big mistake. Yeah, across the board.
Without a doubt. And earlier, I mentioned that we had talked about like absorbing a little bit of one's personality. Can you get into that a little bit? Because when we had our call, I found that really interesting. If you remember what that was about, if you can get into it.
Yeah. I mean, this is another generalization, but I tend to see that women will become their partners for a lot of reasons, but they'll end up becoming interested in their music tastes. They'll end up becoming interested in the sports that they watch. They'll end up becoming interested in the NASCAR racer that they're interested in, again, to appease the man, which is fine. Of course, take interests in your partners, but don't then lose your interests to seem more interesting to them. Men don't do this as much in my experience.
Not as much. Yeah. But I can still see it happening, you know, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned the music stuff. Like, music taste for me when I was single was such a big thing for some reason. It's like, I need to like find someone who has like similar music taste. And I definitely realized like that's bullshit. Like that's not a requirement for me. That's not one of my list items. No. I was much happier being exposed to other music, but that like makes me think of this example where you need to have other perspective, obviously, in a relationship. People who are like too similar, what are you learning from them? When you say that your partner is the most interesting person to you because you don't understand the way that they think and the why they think things, like that can be so fun in a relationship too. You know what I'm saying? Like that gives you so much more to like look forward to. You're discovering so much new about this person all the time, I would imagine.
But it's the problem again of the one and the soulmate. We tell ourselves, specifically women, because we're romantics and we grew up with Cinderella, so we must have the shoe fit in every category, right? We think,
and sometimes you got to jam that shoe in.
Well, jam the shoe in like the twin did, right? You'll jam it in and be like, well, look, we like the same things and we like all blah blah blah, instead of allowing them to like what they like and you like what you like, and you two come together. Just on the drive over, I looked at my partner and I said, you know, you're a person, you're an individual, and I'm an individual, and we're choosing for this period of time to be together and to experience life together. Now, I don't know if that's going to be forever. And he goes, wow, every time I said that to all my exes, they'd get so angry. And I'm like, no, I don't know. And you don't know. I certainly hope at this point, but we're just two individual people having our one existence.
Mm-hmm.
A meditation I practice a lot is a transcendental, which usually means a mantra meditation, where I go over and over and over, this is my life.
Mm-hmm.
This is my life. This is my life for 20 minutes.
Mm.
And you can move this to, this is my arm. These are my fingertips. My right foot is falling asleep, so I'm gonna move it. But this is my tingling right foot, right? And you really attune to, this is me.
Mm-hmm.
And in a loving relationship, can you go, and in a romantic one, can you go, this is me, and that's you.
Mm-hmm.
That can make the shoe fit. Just two people navigating life together,
Mm-hmm.
seeing each other's faults, seeing each other's
You do
traumas.
not have to be the same.
You don't have to be the same, and they're gonna love you regardless. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the fear. They want, I
Mm-hmm.
want to be interested in all they are, so that they find me interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and so that we're compatible.
Mm-hmm.
Compatibility is seeing each other and experiencing each other,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've got a ton of good stuff on relationships in our talk so far. To like steer us towards the end of our conversation, I want to talk a bit more, like, I guess, on the nose with therapy. Why do you think it is sometimes that men in particular are hesitant to try therapy? In what you've experienced and people who've approached you, I mean, my own, and I know that I said I haven't done therapy, I've done counseling. Like, I went to that place because I was at like a point of crisis, or it felt like a point of crisis in my life, whether that be how I was feeling in the relationship at the time, but also how I was feeling with my work. You know, like I had, like, that's another like big place of value for men, right? Is what we do with our work. Like, how successful are we? And I was just hitting this wall, and that really drove me to reach out to it. But then of course I was able to bring up relationship things with my counselor at that point, once I felt like comfortable. Why do you think there is sometimes a hesitation for men to go down that route?
Yeah. I don't know. And this is the most beautiful response, because the men that come and see me, I see growth in a way I can't put words to. It's like a light bulb clicks, and the response I have with my male clientele is, my boss has noticed, my gym friends have noticed, my bar buddies are not as frequent. I have seen such a profound difference in my men clientele that I don't know the hesitation. There's so many intelligent men making podcasts, yourself included. There's so many incredible models now of powerhouses. Dax Shepard has one of the top podcasts, Armchair Expert, right? And he speaks openly about therapy regularly. He's got BetterHelp as one of his sponsors. I mean, I don't know. And I was hoping that you could tell me, because it would certainly help me in my practice of understanding this.
I think that for men, when you look at how men are people who tend to stifle our emotion and kind of hide our emotion and not want to show that weakness and vulnerability, it can take us longer, I think, to hit a point where we realize there's a problem. And it takes hitting that point, and it took me hitting that point to begin looking at the idea of counseling or therapy. We've talked about on this podcast how valuable it can be to look at it as a form of maintenance. You don't necessarily have to be there because there's a problem. It's good to have, if you can access it, it's good to have it as a regular place, because it is maintenance. It's like going to the gym and maintaining a level of physical fitness. It's the same thing for your brain. But I think as men, if we haven't hit a point where it's that bad, we're not going to go. Why would I bring something up to somebody who doesn't know me if I can keep it in? You know, if I can hold it into myself, why would I?
Do you think men think I can figure this out on my own, kind of thing?
I do.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And then it gets to a point where you can't. You've been like trying the same thing with the same problem, the same approach a million times, and you're getting nowhere. And then you start to reach out for help. I think that's what it was for me.
As a man, is that a moment of weakness, or do you feel strength when you do reach out?
For me, I felt strength. For me, I felt like I knew I was taking a step that would help. When I had my first counselor call booked, I was like, okay, I can look forward to this day. I'm going to see what it's like. I've never done counseling before. I'm going to see what it's like. After that first session, pre-booking the next one was awesome. it was like I had this even keel then that would carry me all the way through the week. No matter what happened, I would know like, okay, in 2 weeks time, I'm talking again. And there was strength in that, I guess. But I can understand how men might see it also as weakness, right? You're now admitting to yourself that something's wrong.
Yeah, and in my case, which is unique, is that they're not just admitting to themselves, but they're admitting to a female counterpart across the seat from them. Something is wrong with me.
Personally, I find it easier to speak to women. I don't know if that's because I grew up with like my single mom, right? My counselor was female, and I was really happy that they were. I find it easier to open up in that way. I find it awkward sometimes talking to men directly about stuff going on. It's funny. I was even just at my mom's place last night, and we had one of my cousins in from Alberta, and like I was in the room on my own for like a little bit with him, and it wasn't like totally awkward, but I was like, oh shit, like
Men.
what do I have? Yeah, men. Yeah, legit. I was just sitting there thinking like, okay, fishing? No. But yeah,
I have male therapists my whole life.
Yeah. And
there is some research behind that.
I think that there is, absolutely. I mean, you see it in kids and parents, right? So often a daughter gravitates towards the father, a son gravitates towards the mother.
Yeah.
I found a lot of value in going to therapy or counseling. In my head, I see them as the same thing. I refer to them the same way. And I agree with you that like, I don't see many people go through it and come out saying you should never do that.
I've never had that in my case and in my peer group. And like I said, I have seen the largest change in my men clientele. And I think it stems from what you started yours with. This is that we are creatures of suppression, and you are invited into a space where it's my main job to create a container that you feel safe to start exploring. And I am a somatic therapist. Somatic is soma, Latin root for that is a body-centered therapist. So I'm constantly having my clients go into their body and sense where they're feeling it.
Yeah, how are you physically feeling?
Oof, the clientele that I have that go, this is the first time I've noticed this sensation.
How often are you like encountering them feeling like tense?
All the time.
Yeah.
Shoulders are always up.
Yeah.
And big thing I noticed with my male versus my female clients is when my females feel uncomfortable, they tend to rattle their knee or their leg of some sort. When my men feel uncomfortable, they tend to reposition and clench their own legs. Lots of jaw. I'm a somatic therapist. I'm constantly noticing body language. Lots of jaw tightness in men. Lots of eye avoidance with women.
Interesting.
So many little
That's
markers.
funny, the eye avoidance with women piece, because that is opposite of what normally happens. I got this like a long time ago from my cousin. She pointed this out and talked about how like men versus women will talk. Like if you sit men down next to each other, if they're thinking about something or speaking, they're not looking at the other guy typically. Women will look at each other. They make eye contact. Right. And I thought that was interesting because I noticed that. I noticed that when I have a conversation with anybody, I look away a lot of the times while I'm talking to you. Like I'm looking and I'm thinking elsewhere. And it's not that you're not connected with the conversation. It's just the way that we are. So I found that interesting that women would avoid eye contact when they are sitting uneasily with a feeling.
I sense it as they're going inward. They'll look away and they'll go, I feel it. And they're going into their bodies. I feel it in my stomach, Jessa. And they'll close their eyes, so they'll look away. Men, when I ask them to get into their bodies, it's rather uncomfortable. So they take on a power stance of, I don't know, I don't really feel anything, looking me dead in the eye, almost staring me down like, you better stop asking the line of questioning you're on. You know, I don't feel shit. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But it's those little micro moments. You know, and then touching it and being like, I notice when I ask you about your body that you stare at me. What's that like for you? Well, you're asking me a question, so I stare at you. I'm noticing
you don't.
Jaws getting tight. What's that like? And I'm constantly, and then the most beautiful moment in the whole world is when a client comes in a year into analysis and they'll say, yeah, so my boss called me and I knew I was mad because my jaw was clenching. And so I ended up answering and they don't even realize it, that they just use their somatic markers, their body, to source an emotion.
It's huge.
In real time, which helped them direct the conversation with their boss in a more intentional way.
I had a fantastic manager at one point, and she actually said something similar to that. When I started going through counseling and I was struggling with where I was at in my job, she was fantastic, and she recommended, not with the same language, obviously, like with the trained background that you have, but recommended trying to identify, like, when you are feeling really frustrated, are you getting really flush? You know, like, is your heart rate going up? Are you noticing things about you? Because if you can start to notice those markers, then you'll know when something's happening before you're even expressing it verbally, or before you're expressing it with tone and like just body language and how you carry yourself. If you can identify those earlier markers, you catch those feelings earlier, and you know, like, oh shit, I'm starting to feel a certain way, which is huge.
Let me tell all of the men listening, there is nothing sexier than saying, honey, I'm feeling irritated, and I know that because, and then telling me something going on in your body that indicates anger. That level of awareness is hotter than a six-pack.
That's why we want 91% of people going to therapy on it.
That's so sexy. Are you kidding me? Oof.
That's awesome.
That level of awareness brings you closer, and it makes me want you more because you know what's going on in your body, which tells me that you're going to treat me with the acknowledgement that your emotions are taking over you, which means that you're going to be emotional in other areas. I mean, that's attractive.
Yeah. No. When talking about how important therapy is with relationships, I think we've made a pretty strong case here to advocate for
91%.
that. Yeah. And it makes me think of going back to just the accessibility side of therapy and the fact that there is a cost to it in some cases, but there are other modes of getting to understand yourself that we've identified through meditation, through journaling. I find, to talk about for a second again, men wanting to choose to go through therapy or not. Kendrick Lamar's latest album is all about therapy and going to therapy. I have found so many times music to be very therapeutic. But if you wanted to take that a step further, taking what you've taught me today, which is about intention, like that's the thing I'm really taking away from our conversation, is intention in how you reflect. If I found an album that I really loved, I could be a lot more intentional afterwards about, like, what did I like about that track? Like, why did that stand out to me? Pause for a moment and go, like, okay, how does that fit into my life? That would let me understand me through song without having to be someone who is comfortable picking up a journal and writing about themselves. You can find this through other mediums that way. People listening to the podcast, right? Like, oftentimes have reached out about how something has helped them. Like, be more intentional about that. You know what I mean? Write that shit down. Write it down. And get that out there. That's awesome.
And repeat it and teach it to others. Repeat it, teach it to others, write it down, and think about how it made you feel.
Yeah.
And take anything that you've done in your life that doesn't feel good as an opportunity to learn. You're not a bad person because you did something wrong. You're just experiencing life, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
It's beautiful.
Open the Kendrick. I love that you always bring music in.
Yeah, I love it.
It's
a big piece. I mean, look at the art.
This is insane. Your studio is just top notch.
Frank is performing next weekend at Coachella, and I gotta watch him. But yeah. Jessa, I have one more question. On the nose of therapy, you as a therapist, who do you go to now? I know you talked about earlier that you have had therapists in the past. You still have one now. And what does that look like to you? How do you get your thoughts out when it's not yourself?
So important is if you're experiencing depression, find 5 professionals, experts, if you will, in the field of depression and healing, and follow them rigorously. If you have trauma, childhood, adult, find people talking about that and let those be your support system. We live in a technological age. Your 5 people that you spend the most time with might not even be physical people. You might have a parasocial relationship with them. So I have my 5 people that I really, Jay Shetty, I've quoted the same quote from him. He's my person. He's done everything that I aspire to do in my life. And he motivates me and inspires me. And I listen to his podcast like it's a ritual. And I read his books and like a ritual. Dr. Gabriel Maté talks about childhood trauma. I study him with everything I have. And I keep these people in my back pocket as my support system because they are talking about what hurts me and what scares me about myself. And those are my support system outside of the nuclear one, right? Your mom, your dad, or your caretakers, your best friends, your partners. I rely on those people out there because they're unbiased. They're not talking to me about me. They're talking about what I'm going through and giving me better verbiage, a deeper understanding, and usually a more rich dialogue about what's going on instead of the way that you see things, the way that you articulate things.
Yeah.
I heard someone say once, how much does your trauma define you? And before listening to this one person in my support system, Dr. Gabriel Mate, I said, your trauma absolutely defines you. It biologically changes you, and your prefrontal cortex gets impacted, and your hypothalamus stores that memory, and your vagus nerve. I mean, I was all into the neuroscience. My research, my thesis in my master's degree was on the neuroscience of trauma. So if you think there's somebody who thought trauma messed with you, I thought so.
That's you, yeah.
Big time. And he said, it matters as much as you make it matter, as much as you want it to, as much as it does. And I don't know what it was, but that sentence helped me pull from this victim mindset that my parent or partner or friends couldn't move me out of. Their words wouldn't have shaped me. They knew me too close. They knew me.
That's very interesting.
But he said, it's as much as you want it to. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want it to matter a little less than I'm making it matter. And he gave me the permission.
Wow. Like the reason why I wanted to ask that question is like, I would imagine obviously, and I didn't understand what the answer would be until you've given it now, which is really cool. Cause I imagined that you as a therapist, you've got all these tools and this understanding, this like very deep level of knowledge of how the mind reacts and works and evolves and grows. But you only have yours, right? Like that's where yours is every day. You sit with your understanding, your knowledge of it. And just as a patient would come to you and look for your knowledge and get them to see something a different way, you can see the same in these other people, these 5 that are not even direct relationships, but you still are able to gain something from that and help you through stuff.
Yeah, I studied for 8 years in higher education. I went to, I lived in 3 countries for 3 different university experiences and studied under incredible Buddhist practitioners. I've been on Vipassana, which is silent retreat, and I know nothing. I know nothing. Sure. I'm a baby.
Right.
I'm a child in my intelligence. I'm a child in my opinions, and I will be forever. Forever. And as long as I can keep that child's mind and know that I don't know everything and make sure that what I do know is I can find a lot from other people, then I think I'm going to keep growing and learning. But as soon as you stop and think you've got it, you don't.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous place to reside.
Absolutely.
Because if I would have thought I got it, I would have been like, my trauma defines me neurologically. Look at my thesis, 27 pages long. It's all about every single part of your brain that's impacted by trauma. We are doomed.
Right.
I am doomed. Right? And then I took one person that's smarter than me and older than me to say it's as much as you want it to, and me to reframe the way I think.
Yeah. Yeah, you can get caught in your own train of thought, right? It's a little thought circle, and you're just going to be there. It's that definition of insanity thing, right? You keep doing something the same way but expecting a different result. You won't get a different result if what you've been applying to it hasn't been getting you there. So that makes a lot of sense.
Who's your support?
My support? My mom.
Just send that clip to her. With the eye glaze and then the head rub and the repositioning we talked about.
Got my coffee. Yeah, my mom. My mom's always been my support. She's been great my whole life and still continues to be. I tell her probably everything before anyone else hears it. Someone that needs to hear the thing, right? She'll hear it before they do, and she never tells me to go about something a certain way. She just listens really well. It makes me feel like my thoughts are valid and reassures me that she'll still love me no matter how anything goes, and that's
secure.
That's awesome. My mom is the person I go to. I haven't done counseling in a while, and I think that goes back to how, and again, generalizing, but men, if I don't have a problem, I'm not treating it. I did, when I felt really good about where I was at, I did continue counseling for a bit. I spaced out the sessions a bit more. It was almost like tapering off, but I've been at a good place. I feel like I've been at a good place where I'm not needing to be going for counseling. So that has no longer been where I go. These conversations are where I go too. Having the podcast is huge for me. And I Kabir and I have both said that many times. We look forward to this just as a space where we know it's safe, it's comfortable, and we can just talk. that's so valuable. My mom, the space, my friends, my partner, it's all valuable. My mom's the go-to.
Yeah. Add yourself into that mix.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You're your support.
Yeah.
You're all you got at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're doing so much. We're all doing so much. Like everyone listening, like you're doing so much. You're waking up every day and you're doing life. And this is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first tenet in Buddhism. Life is dukkha. Life is suffering. It's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And we have to be sitting with ourselves and supporting ourselves through it and talking to ourselves like, you got this, boss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Buddy boss chief.
You got this, chief.
Because
it's really, really hard.
Yeah. Jessa, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, sharing way too many tips, and I love it. I always find it to come out of one of these conversations and feel like I've really learned something is awesome. And most of them do. Most of them teach me something. But as I said earlier, that piece about intention and being more intentional about reflection, definitely going to keep that in mind.
Please think about who you are when you're standing in the line. Think about who you are when you're showering. Think about who you are when you're doing the dishes. Slow down. Take a breath throughout the day and go, who am I right now? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What does love mean to me? Ask yourself all those questions all the time, because all you got is you. Yeah.
I hope and I know our audience will have been taking something away from this. And I hope some of your fans have come to check you out and listen to this.
For sure. What's
I know
up,
they
babies?
I know they get your lives, right? They get your 2-hour therapy sessions, which is really cool. I love that.
They're not therapy sessions.
For legal reasons. These are not therapy sessions.
They're not that. We got to really keep that in the log.
Yeah.
We're definitely not, but I do 2-hour. Actually, I went over Jay Shetty's book the last few weeks and did a lot of exercises out of that book, but I spent a lot of time with my content creation, and I never realized that it was a passion. And I started crying the other day telling a friend, I said, this is it. This is my dharma, which is a Buddhist word for duty or meaning. So this is it. This is my dharma. I need to be doing this. So I'm so happy to be here, and I'm excited for the mistakes that I made in this podcast. I look forward to them. I look forward to the things that people liked and continuing to learn and grow from all of it.
I don't think there were many mistakes, Jess.
There always is, honey.
This was beautiful.
There always is. There has to be.
And there's beauty in mistakes then. There you go.
You reflect on how you feel when they come up, and you love it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this being out and getting to listen back to this as well. For our audience, this will have been on video, so I can actually look at the camera again. I haven't done that in like 3 weeks. I hope you all enjoyed. This week's episode. I love this conversation. Been looking forward to it for I want to say almost a month now.
I know, me too.
Yeah, been a while. So I'm glad we finally got to sit down and do this. Big thanks to you making the trip up here. That's huge for us trying to make this look and feel good, right? So yeah, thank you for everything you've taught us and just taking the time. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for teaching people.
Of course. Everybody, leave a like, comment, subscribe, whatever. It doesn't matter what you do. I don't even care.
I do. I'm just kidding. I got a fragile ego.
Leave a like then, please.
Please help me out.
Yeah.
I have some childhood abandonment issues.
And make sure you do go and check out @TherapyJessa on TikTok. And
Instagram,
at Therapy Jessa
and
Official.
YouTube now, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I had to do it. I had to grab the tag now.
But yeah. Now that you saw that.
I had to grab the tag.
So, I'll put all your links in the description for the episode.
Jessa.
And at Therapy Jessa. Check it out. There's a lot of good stuff there. And we will see you all next week with another episode. We're going to be joined by a guy, Matthew. I want to say last name. I'm going to blank on it. Hoogveld? I don't know. But he's Hoogveld. Good episode coming next week as well. We'll see you then. Peace.
Ciao.